Three teams have already secured their debutante or their debut in the 2026 World Cup. We are very likely not done adding new teams to play in this new World Cup. Cape Verde, Jordan, and Uzbekistan are already through, and there will be more. There's a chance that by the time you're watching this video, there's already been more, right? There's teams like Benin that have a chance to clinch today that would be going to their first ever World Cup. This continues a trend, and my favorite trend, maybe in all of sports, of every single World Cup that's ever been played having a new debut nation in it. It's kind of wild, but yes, every single World Cup has had a new debut nation. Now, the last World Cup was actually the first one where the only debut nation didn't actually have to qualify. That was Qatar. They, of course, hosted the entire tournament, which allowed them to get in. And now we are at a total with these three teams of 83 different nations that have been represented at the World Cup. Some of which, like East Germany or the Dutch East Indies, don't exist anymore. And some of which, obviously, the most of which still do. But this has led to some serious complaints from people like this. There's going to be some utter dross games at this World Cup, isn't there? No one in their right mind gets excited for Cape Verde, Uzbekistan, or Jordan versus Paraguay. Of course, Paraguay has been to the World Cup plenty of times before, but they have also qualified, and those are not matches that are going to happen. That's not the point of this video or the point of anything for this matter, but you're never going to get this match. Because Cape Verde and Uzbekistan are both in pot 4. Unless this is a knockout match, which slap my ass and call me Shirley. I would love for this to be a knockout match. It's probably not going to happen. I think Paraguay might be pot 3, so you might be able to end up with a Jordan v. Paraguay matchup. But if you don't enjoy this, okay, people jump on the fact that the World Cup's been expanded from 32 to 48. There are definitely enough competent men's national teams to play a 48-team World Cup. There will be good teams that miss. It's already happened. Sweden's not going to go. Mali from Africa, that's got, players that like Yves Bissouma, they're out. They didn't make it. Hell, Nigeria is about to miss. And by the time you watch this, it's very likely they've been eliminated from the World Cup entirely. At the very least, they're going to be going through the African playoff when teams like Cape Verde won their group. Right? And so let's not pretend like the expansion of 48 is just letting in anyone. It's still only letting in teams that are good. And let me show you what I'm talking about. Uzbekistan has been close to the World Cup with 32 teams 3 separate times. They missed on goal difference. They missed by a point. That's 2 separate World Cup qualifications that they missed their World Cup qualification by the slimmest imaginable margins. Then you take a look at Cape Verde. They made the quarterfinals at the last Africa Cup of Nations. There are 9 qualifying spots now out of Africa. Cape Verde, top 8 African teams, according to the Africa Cup of Nations, which is kind of used to decide such things. Also, Cape Verde finished ahead of Cameroon, one of the old storied powerhouses of Africa. Lost their group to Cape Verde by 4 points. If you can finish ahead of Cameroon in a group, you deserve to go to the World Cup. I'm okay with that. I am 100% okay with that. And yet, replies to my boy Niran saying Cape Verde, Jordan, and Uzbekistan, that's absolutely world class. You have people saying, is it though? Right? Doesn't it feel a bit less cool since there's more spots, so lesser teams have more of a chance than they ever have? When the World Cup expanded to 32, there were a lot less teams trying to qualify than there are now. We have now hit a point where basically every nation in the world is attempting to qualify, with the exception of a few nations on the fringe, like Nauru or whatever, or Micronesia or the Marshall Islands, that have national teams that play friendlies, but they're not actually at a level where they're able to play through FIFA. Basically, everybody else, though, is in qualifying now. Over the last 30 years, there's been a remarkable amount of getting your shit together from national teams all over the world, and a recognition that international football is one of the coolest things that we do as a species. It's one of the very few things that really brings the entire world together. It's a uniting force. The World Cup, of course, being the event that is the spark of that uniting force. But let's go back to the 3 teams that are here. Jordan made the semifinals of the Asian Cup. Asian Cup 2023. Pull it up. right? There are teams that you would consider not washed that did not get as far as Jordan did. I said semis, I meant final. Jordan got farther than Iran, Japan, and South Korea at the last Asian Cup. How are you going to look that team in the eye and tell them that they don't belong at a World Cup? Every recognizable team that you would consider, is supposed to be involved at a World Cup, even your Australias or whatever. Jordan got ahead of all of them. Jordan beat South Korea 2-0 in the semifinal. This is why we play World Cup qualifying. I am begging you to resist the urge to say that these teams only got in because the World Cup expanded. Absolutely begging you. Because those are just the three teams that are there so far. But if Benin does get in today, they finished ahead of South Africa and Nigeria. Of course, they beat South Africa because of their own stupidity, getting a 3-point penalty for playing an ineligible player because of yellow card accumulation. But if you can finish ahead of two real World Cup level type teams, you belong at the World Cup. You belong there. I don't know a single player on Benin. I don't care. I didn't know a single player on Trinidad and Tobago. It was still awesome when they made it. You earn it. Every single person that's not hosting the World Cup earns their right to be there. They go into a group, they play other nations that all are desperate to get to this point, and they earn that spot. And with 48 teams, it's still the same. And let's not pretend that with 32 teams, there weren't a ton of good teams missing the World Cup. You don't want to create a world where every good team makes the World Cup every year. But I think 48 is actually genuinely a very good number. Now that I feel like you're comfortable with the fact that these three teams definitely deserve to be here, 48 does feel like a good number to me. 64 is probably too much. 64, you start getting to like 25% of every nation attempting to qualify in the entire world, and that's just kind of wrong. Because there is a point where it's watered down. There is a point where it's too much. The fact that there are a lot more teams trying to qualify now than when the tournament moved to 32 makes me feel comfortable with this. The fact that continents like Africa that have a ton of competent teams were limited to 5 spots. Asia limited to like 4.5 spots in the old system. That didn't sit well with me because there's so many freaking countries in those continents. Right? CONCACAF has been expanded to 6. What an opportunity for the nations that aren't the U.S. and Mexico to have a chance, for it to be open. Right? Obviously, Costa Rica stepped through that void. Canada stepped through that void. Honduras has been a pretty regular presence at the World Cup. But you have countries like Jamaica that have serious footballing potential that they have shown. Maybe a nation like Haiti that could really use a win right now and is definitely talented enough to make the World Cup dream come true. Spreading all of that kind of around the globe. There will be some people that tell you expanding the World Cup endlessly is the best way to go. Obviously, you can't. You still want the tournament to happen a month and a half, over 48, 60 days or whatever in the summer, once every 4 years. That's what makes it so special. That's what makes everybody want to tune in all the time for every single match. Just that feeling of special togetherness that the World Cup can provide. But a 48-team World Cup, it's not too much. Each continent gets a couple more spots. And those couple more spots are going to teams that are absolutely at the level required to go to this tournament. And who cares? Maybe they do show up and get blown out. Maybe Jordan plays Spain and loses 8-0. Jordan has proven at things like the Asian Cup and then again in World Cup qualifying that they belong on this stage. And I'll tell you what, if Jordan does go to the World Cup and gets blown out 8-0 against Spain, 20 years from now, Spain won't be able to do that to Jordan. That's how it works. The growth and the explosion of football in nations that make the World Cup is very predictably impressive. And even with nations like Trinidad and Tobago and Togo that don't seem to be able to capitalize on that World Cup appearance, to produce like another generation of great players or another Kenwyn Jones or another Emmanuel Adebayor. It is a special moment for their country. I'm aware that this isn't a charity. But even if a nation goes to the World Cup and doesn't make anything out of it in terms of developing football in their country afterwards, you earn the right to do it. And you earn the right to wave the flag. Like this is where I'm almost like comrade, Where like if you do earn that right, and I think 48 is fair, you get that magic moment. where your country's on the world stage. Because a lot of people that watch these videos, our countries are on the world stage all the time. Even if you're like Serbian or something, your country's still on the world stage a good amount. You've been to the World Cup a bunch. Togo and Trinidad and Tobago are not. Cape Verde is not. Jordan is not. Jordan's just kind of an afterthought in the Middle East. Uzbekistan certainly isn't. Now the entire world gets to sit up and pay attention. Know who you are. Watch your team play. And there is so much pride in that, it's like impossible for people to imagine when you live in the United States and every time you watch the Olympics, there's a billion people that are representing you that are there. Or you watch the World Cup and usually you're there. So I think it's a good thing. I get the argument why people think it's a bad thing, but honestly, if you think it's a bad thing that these countries are going to the World Cup, you don't really know ball. Because particularly these three teams earned it in a way where a 32-team World Cup was absolutely in their striking distance. And they were playing well enough at this particular point to just about pull that off anyways. And there's always a new team at every World Cup, so there would have been a new team if we only had a 32-team World Cup anyways. But if they expand it to 64 for the next World Cup, they're starting to ruin a good thing.